Arizona basketball rolls, all systems go, and this was everything we needed. Arizona, UCLA, let's get started here.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Show is brought to you by LinkedIn. Check out LinkedIn. As you all know, LinkedIn is where everybody gets their jobs. All right, now, Arizona basketball destroys UCLA. We are going to mock and we're going to ridicule a good percentage of UCLA. But first, let's talk about the good guys. Let's talk about Arizona. And first and foremost, this was a all-around performance by the Wildcats. There really was no stone left unturned here by what Arizona needed to do. Arizona, listen, Arizona is your Pac-12 champions. But Arizona knew going into this that they've also got bigger goals. They want to obviously go far in the NCAA tournament, and they knew that you needed to be able to beat UCLA. And it was kind of one of those things. Yes, a win is a win is a win, but UCLA also stinks. So Arizona, you wanted to be able to just destroy UCLA, and they did just that. What was nice about this game and what's nice about what you're seeing about this University of Arizona team is that they are pushing. They're continuing to push the pace, and they are not giving up leads. When they, at least this is the case the last 3-4 games. In the past, Arizona would play really well and then kind of let the foot off the gas, let another team back into the game, something like that. Or they would get off to a super slow start like they did against UCLA in the first game at McHale, and then they would just struggle, or then obviously they would struggle, and then they would take off from there, and they would correct the issues. There has been none of that, and we like that there has been none of that. Against ASU, granted, ASU got back into the game, but Arizona still was kind of able to keep them at arm's length. Oregon was never able to get back into the game. They had 33 points from Jermaine Couisnard in the second half, and it didn't matter. Arizona still rolled by 20. So there's that. But then with UCLA, Arizona gets off to the 7-2 lead. Then UCLA gets back up 8-7, and you're kind of wondering, how's this game going to go? And then Arizona got a run, and it never looked back. And what you saw, too, was a team in Arizona that I believe, outside of UConn, I believe that Arizona has, when they're clicking, I believe Arizona has the highest upside of any team in the country. And they do. Because they just, like we've talked about, they just check off every box, especially when the bench is really going, which we're going to get to in a second. But you got big men, you got scorers, you got shooters, you've got guards, you've got perimeter players, you've got a deep team. It's just overall, you got an alpha. It's just overall a really, really good team that pretty much, like I said, checks off every single box that you need to have checked off to win a national title. And they can compete at the highest of levels. Like I said, I think UConn, I believe, has a next level that I think only Arizona can really get to. Houston is really good, but Houston also struggles to score the basketball. If you struggle to score the basketball, you could have a hard time, especially say in the round of 32 already. Purdue, Big Ten, we've seen this before. I'll believe Purdue when I see it, and we can go with a variety of other teams. And again, Arizona could get bounced early, but overall, this is a team that's clicking on all cylinders, and it's pretty much across the board. The roster construction is perfect. But let's talk Kylan Boswell, for example. Kylan Boswell had 10 points and 4 assists. I didn't need anything more from him, but also how the 10 points and 4 assists looked. He looked comfortable out there. And he was hunting his shot. He was taking the three. He was stepping in. He was taking if the open shot was there, he was taking it, and he wasn't forcing anything either. And I think that's also what is kind of reassuring, is that he just looked like he is back to playing basketball. When Kylan Boswell is just back to playing basketball, he is really, really good. And not only is he really, really good, he's also a player who I think it's fair to say, can be a real difference maker. It's just with him, it's just all about confidence. But when he's taking the three, when he's sizing up his defender and looking at him and saying, okay, what do I want to do? How do I want to attack? That's going to be a good Kylan Boswell. It's when he is clearly outthinking himself And then that pretty much impacts every other aspect of his game. But that was exactly what you needed from Boswell. And again, it wasn't like he was the 17-point Boswell that we saw against ASU in the first half. He was just very solid, and that's just what Arizona needs. And when Arizona gets that type of performance, they're going to be really, really difficult to beat. Caleb Love. Well, when Kylan Boswell is going, Caleb Love just kind of fits in. Caleb Love had 17 points, but it was a quiet 17 points. And I say that in a very nice way. It wasn't the stressful, well, we got to take, 25 shots to get to the 40 or to the 30 points. He just kind of went about it. And one thing about Love at this point, he's also a very underrated passer. Some of his assist numbers through the last 4 or 5 games have been awesome. 5 assists, 6 assists, 4 assists, 5 assists. He's turned into a willing passer, and not only that, he's turned into a good passer. So let's keep that one going. Let's keep the good times going. But that backcourt has just, that starting backcourt the last couple games has just been scintillating. And that's what Arizona is going to need. Then you look at the bench, and we got to talk about the bench a lot because that kind of factors into the perimeter play. Jaden Bradley and KJ Lewis. With KJ Lewis especially, this was probably his best game in a Wildcat uniform. No, it was his best game in a Wildcat uniform. 18 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. And you also saw the play where he brought the ball down the court, and he looked he looked around, and then he kind of pulled up for the 3-point shot, and you're like, whoa, that was a little bit of a move that I didn't know that he had necessarily going. And we've talked about it. KJ Lewis can shoot KJ Lewis is going to be a good shooter. It's not like he's got a broken form. It's not like he has some kind of shot, some kind of screwball that he's throwing up. He's going to be a good shooter. Sometimes it just takes players like that a little bit of time. And with him, it just took a little bit of time, but he's going to be a good shooter. I don't think there's any doubt about that. He's also a great NBA prospect. Again, I'm just a little worried. I don't want him showing out too much. I don't want the Dalen Terry situation where, you start playing really well and the teams start looking at you and they're like, man, he's got a lot of talent there, and we can row. I just want KJ back for one more year before he goes off to play in the NBA. I don't think I'm asking too much. I know I'm not asking too much. That's what I want from KJ Lewis. I just need one more year, but man, he is a good basketball player, and Arizona is going to need him. Arizona is going to need him in a big way because keep in mind, when you go into the NCAA tournament, there's going to be games when Umar Ballo, leader of men, can probably not play a ton because of, for a variety of reasons, but first because of, say, free throws, maybe he gets into foul trouble. You're probably not going to want to go with Mount Crevis, too much at this stage in the game. And that means that going small. And if you go small, KJ's got to probably be in there. And then you look at something where it's Keyshawn Johnson at the center, Pella Larson maybe at the 4, KJ at the 3, Caleb Love at the 2, and then whoever's playing the best out of Jaden Bradley or Kylan Boswell. And, you can mix and match, obviously. But that young man is just a really, really good basketball player. And it's cool seeing him come to fruition because this was somebody that was not highly rated, and NBA scouts high school scouts really missed out on him in a big way. He is a fantastic basketball player, and as the cliche goes, his best days are definitely ahead of him. All right, we're going to talk about another player that has been equally as impactful. But first, Fire TV, my friends, check it out. To learn more, visit Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. All right, this is your sports destination. Listen, Amazon streaming is the wave of the future. We all know this. And there's all kinds of games that you can watch. And not only is there all kinds of games you can watch, there's also games that you can also say that, all right, I want to check this out. I want to check this out. And Amazon is here for you. Again, check it out, Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. You will thank me later. Again, all kinds of good stuff there. And again, a great sports destination. Get with the future. Get with what all the cool kids are doing. Check it out. Again, Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now, Jaden Bradley. I've never really understood the whole thing about where Jaden Bradley is not a shooter or not necessarily shooter. He's not really a shooter, but that Jaden Bradley can't score the basketball. Jaden Bradley can score the freaking basketball. And we've seen it. If you were to give Jaden Bradley 30 minutes per game, guess what? Jaden Bradley's probably averaging 12 or 13 points per game. He can score. It's not like he's it's not like he's super deficient in that area. And not only is he not super deficient in that area, he's good. He's got a nice little mid-range. He can finish around the hoop. He's got a very uncanny ability to be able to finish in transition as well. But overall, Jaden Bradley is just he's just a natural basketball player. And I think sometimes in this day and age with point guards where you're like, man, everybody's averaging 35 points per game or whatever the case, you look at somebody and you're like, this guy's really not that. He is that. Jaden Bradley is that dude. I think by the time he leaves here, he's going to be a 15, 16 point per game scorer. And I believe he's going to play in the NBA, and I believe he's going to play in the NBA for a long time. But also still, let's not dismiss, though, exactly what he does from a defensive standpoint. And that's really where he makes his bones. He's got some of the quickest hands that I think I've ever seen here at the U of A. Again, I'm going to keep going with that Jason Terry comparison. Again, I get that he's not JT. Because, who is? JT's one of the five best, JT's one of the five best, players to ever come through the U of A. But it's a little bit of that same template, though. He's got that same angular body. He's got kind of just a natural feel for what needs to happen at what point. Just a good basketball player, and somebody that I think, as we watch him continue to develop, continue to grow, you're going to see him can just continue to get better. Again, there is a lot to like about Jaden Bradley and what Jaden Bradley can do. And there's really nothing that, he can't do. When Jaden Bradley and KJ Lewis come into the game, things change. The momentum changes. Things are just different when those two young men enter the game. And that's something that is, Arizona hasn't had here in quite a while, honestly. It kind of goes back to the Hassan Adams, Andre Iguodala, situation where you had these two young bucks that and probably weren't used enough. In actuality, they should have been used more, especially in that loss to Kansas. But these guys are difference makers, and it's not often that you could bring players off the bench that are difference makers. I think in this day and age, a lot of times you got your starting four. Look at Kansas. You got your starting four, your starting five, and then you're just basically saying, all right, whoever else comes out there, just don't mess it up. And that's kind of where it is with, I think that's where it is with a lot of teams. Not with Arizona. With Arizona, when those two guys come into the game, you're looking for them to continue. You're looking for them to increase the lead, or if Arizona's behind, you're looking for them to cut into that. And so that's like I said, that's a real trump card that Arizona has that not a lot of other teams have. And then you factor in Mo Crevis as well. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and say that Mo Crevis, is a finished product or that he's anywhere near as impactful as those two. He's just not. But Mo Crevis is also someone who I think can spell you for 10, 11 minutes and not get, totally overwhelmed. Listen, he's got to get stronger. He's got to get a lot stronger. He's got to get more assertive. But it's also not like you're throwing last year's Henry in there where he's just totally overwhelmed and you're like, oh, gosh, he can hold it down for a few minutes. But either way, the bench is good. Now, listen, those two dudes are going to play 20-plus minutes or, depending on game, they could be playing 20-plus minutes per game. Crevis is not going to be in there, but it is a very nice little setup that Arizona has coming off the bench. Then, but then, like I said, this isn't all systems go. All of the players are really just fitting in. Oumar Ballo didn't even have a vintage Oumar Ballo game where he's going for his 17 and his 14. Oumar Ballo went for what, 9 and 3. That's not the kind of numbers that we're used to seeing out of Oumar Ballo, leader of men, but he was good enough. And Arizona didn't really need him. Keyshawn, we got to talk Keyshawn here for a minute. Keyshawn Johnson has been, I don't know what happened, but whether it was that Washington game, whatever the case may be, but the energy that Arizona needed out of him, it has been there, and it has been there in spades. And that's what Arizona needs. Listen, I can live with the 7 points. That's fine. 11 rebounds. He's got to be that hustle. He's got to be that energy guy. There's no reason that he can't. And yeah, he's a little bit like Kylan Boswell, that when he's playing well, when he's playing active, when he's playing engaged, everybody else just kind of falls into their role. He has been much, much better. And Arizona needs him to be a difference maker. And if he's a difference maker, then, Arizona's going to be really good because, again, he's a really good basketball player. There's a lot to like about him. And then, obviously, Pella, just continue to be steady. Pella, obviously, the jack of all trades, can play a little bit of defense, play a little bit of offense. Just a solid basketball player. That's what Arizona needs. But overall, everybody's kind of fallen into their spots. The rotation is fitting in. Everybody knows their roles. Obviously, Caleb is kind of the alpha on the team, but there's also deficiencies that Caleb has in his game that other players don't. And everybody's kind of picking it up. And that's also, like I said, that's what's exciting to see. This team, I'll take this team against any team in the nation head up. I'd love to see Purdue again. I get Purdue's good. I think Arizona would beat Purdue on a neutral court. The only one that I look at, I'm like, all right, that's pretty much even Steven is UConn. If both sides are playing well, and that's why it's exciting. Now, a couple other things to keep in mind. Obviously, Arizona's probably going to be the 2 seed out west. Especially, if Tennessee beats Kentucky, I think it's very difficult to make the case for Arizona over Tennessee. I'm fine with that, though. I am more than okay with Arizona being the 2 seed out west with Kentucky with Tennessee as the 1. Totally all right with that. But let's talk about now one team that is not in a good spot, and that is UCLA. Listen. This doesn't feel like this is going to end well at UCLA for Mick Cronin. We talked about this yesterday. That team has next to no talent. You've got one player that would probably play at Arizona in a Dembona. That's it. I don't think anybody else that UCLA would play at Arizona, and that's a problem. Listen, there's been ebbs and flows in this rivalry where probably only a couple guys would play on another team, but I don't know that I've ever seen the talent disparity as great as it was last night, where it's like, man, these two teams do not belong on the same court as each other. And a big reason why is because one team just doesn't have as good of players as the other. But that's also on Mick Cronin. When he goes into his pressers and he talks about how his team isn't good enough, they're not smart enough, whatever the case may be, dude, that's on you, bro. I mean, you're the one that recruited these guys. You had Steve Alford's players for quite a while, and you knew that this time was coming when you were going to have to be able to recruit other players, and you've got a bunch of guys that aren't that good, and I think he's trying to go with the international quick fix, but it's not like he's Tommy Lloyd where he's got these deep connections and he knows how all of these players work. He knows the ins and outs of, what their mental makeup is. That's just not who he is. And, that just comes across. And think about it this way. If you're a kid, who would you rather play for, Mick Cronin or Tommy Lloyd? Especially if you're an international player and you've got the background that Tommy Lloyd has from an international perspective. Who would you rather play for? That's and honestly, I don't even know that any UCLA fan would say they'd rather play for Mick Cronin. But UCLA is a mess. Going forward, I don't know exactly what they're going to do because you keep hearing people making the NIL excuse that UCLA doesn't have money for NIL. I still find that odd that that a school that, is going off to the Big Ten doesn't have any money, but maybe they don't. I don't know. But it feels a little odd that Arizona, which is in a financial, a little bit of a straitjacket, is still able to navigate this where UCLA really can't. But UCLA is in a world of hurt. And if I'm a UCLA fan, I'm very concerned about the future because you're going into the Big Ten next year. And again, I think Big Ten basketball sucks, but it's still better than the Pac-12 was this year. And I think it's going to be a slog for them. I think it's going to be very difficult, and we'll see how that one plays out. Now, again, we got another team that we got to preview, but first, LinkedIn. All right, LinkedIn. Listen. Everybody knows somebody that got a job through LinkedIn. You know somebody, I know somebody, everybody knows somebody. And you might have gotten a job through LinkedIn. You might have hired somebody through LinkedIn. Either way, post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Again, this is one of those. You will thank me later, my friends. All kinds of good stuff. And again, listen, it works. Everybody uses it. And there's a reason. If everybody uses something, it's generally because it is a good thing. LinkedIn is a good thing. Check it out. LinkedIn.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free at LinkedIn.com/lockedoncollege. Again, if you get a job, if you get somebody in there, you will thank me later. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now let's talk a little bit about USC. USC is a totally different can of worms than UCLA is because USC actually has talent. I mean, we talked about it before with UCLA, where how many players at UCLA would play at Arizona? Well, not many. At USC's got guys that would play at Arizona. Isaiah Collier would play at Arizona. Boogie Ellis would play at Arizona. Vince the Prince certainly hasn't had the season that I think a lot of us were thinking he would, but he'd be the backup. I mean, he's got a little bit more than Mo Crevis. So you got 2.5 guys, and some guys on the wing that don't stink as well. So you would have some players that would play. But they've just been a discombobulated mess. And again, I like Andy Enfield. I certainly don't think that anybody's ever going to say that he's a master tactician, but I watch his teams, and I think that overall, I think he's done a pretty good job. This was not a season that I saw coming, though. They have been, I think when you look at USC, I think you got to say that they're the most disappointing team in the entire country. You were supposed to have one of the handful of best backcourts in the country. Granted, I get that Bronny James was, had the heart ailment, but still, Bronny James was not a massive calculation for me as to why I thought that USC was going to be awesome. And then up front, I looked for some of those players to make moves. I looked for Morgan to, maybe become a little bit more of a shot, than just a shot blocker. I thought Vince Iwuchukwu was going to be off to the NBA after this year. That certainly hasn't happened. So this is a team this is a program that is in a different way. It's a lot like UCLA in that they're in total disarray, and they're hitting Arizona at the wrong time. I expect Arizona to destroy USC. I think that Arizona is getting them at the right time. Not only is Arizona getting them at the right time, Arizona is just better. Tommy Lloyd is a much better coach than Andy Enfield, and Arizona's just got better players. The roster fits better. Listen, Umar Ballo, the only, Isaiah Collier would probably start at Arizona, but other than that, Arizona's better at every other position. Caleb Love is essentially a better version of Boogie Ellis. And I could just keep going on and on down the list. So as far as a prediction, I'm looking for Arizona, something like 86 to USC 71. I think this is going to be about a 15-point game. You kind of wonder too with USC, how much of that is a front runner type thing where you're just looking to basically just, pack this one in and say, yeah, let's just get to the off season. I don't know, but Arizona's got a lot to play for. And the last thing you really want to do is stub your toe in the last game of the regular season. Go out of this regular season on a high note. And then obviously you want to have those good momentum, that good vibes going into the Pac-12 tournament. By the way, I want to play Stanford and I want to play Washington State again. Listen. I get the thing about, just checking out and getting ready for the tournament, but I think those are two teams that do present some real problems for Arizona. I'd like to see Arizona get them on a neutral court just because I do believe that it's a good learning experience for Arizona to be able to go through all of that. But either way, awesome season for the U of A. Very, very much deserving of being that Pac-12 champion. And it's going to be fun to see how exactly this plays out. But again, I think you're probably looking to be in the 2 seed out west. And listen, I'll take that every day of the week. And I'll take Tennessee being the number 1, and I'll take my chances there. But as always, very much appreciate you guys making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. Bear down, back the A, and we will be back with you.